Hey, what's going on, guys? Watomarmelon back again with an August 31st market watch. I'll have an update to the Yu-Gi-Oh market video tomorrow. So today there's a lot to talk about because, there have been a number of things that have released recently, namely, uh, you have the quarter century secret rares released out of the megatins, which have been, a pretty significant hit to the market. I've said this before, and I'll say it again that Ghost from the Past One, Ghost from the Past Two, for sure hurt the value of the Ghost rare. It no longer became a premium rarity. Rarity collection is about to do it to collector rares, and they are degrading Starlight rares with these reprints and just printings of 25th or quarter century secret rares in the most recent couple of sets, and certainly in the Megatin as promos. This isn't necessarily a bad thing because people get a lot of cool cards for very cheap, and so it's good to help people get into the game. But at the same time, it just removes any sort of value that you can get from Yu-Gi-Oh sets. So we'll see how everything lands. So we'll start things off with Dark Dragoon. This is an interesting one. You can see over the past 3 months, this thing has tanked in value. Part of this is a playable card. However, at the same time, Starlights as a whole have not done particularly well. And you can see that the lowest listed near mint listing is around $210. This card has lost most of its value. And I think this is an interesting collectible pickup, but I think a lot of people are concerned, quarter century secret rares are not done, and this is certainly something that would be up for reprint in quarter century secret rare, and if it gets a quarter century secret rare, I can't imagine that this does not drop significantly in value. Next up, we have Stardust Dragon. This does have a quarter century secret rare, and specifically, actually, we can already start to look at them. Gamer's Choice, this is just to get an idea of what these quarter century secret rares might cost, because if I say, oh, this is a $5 quarter century secret rare, you might say, oh, that's crazy, how can you say that? Well, these are the pre-order prices, which, I remind you, historically are more than what cards end up costing on average. And you can see that Stardust Dragon is at around $10. So even if you assume that it does stick the $10 mark, that is a lot less than $600. And I can't imagine that people are going to continue to pay $600 for something that they can get a very, very close alternative, very, very similar looking card for $10. I don't believe that is it's going to somehow miraculously stick this landing, especially because high end collectors are not going after the Starlight Rare. They're going after the original print Ghost Rare and the original print Ultimate, and so this kind of lands in an in between space where it's a beautiful card, but is it so much more beautiful than a nearly identical copy that costs 1/60th the price? I don't think that it's going to stick the landing. Next up, we have Exodia. I also want to bring this one up because, lo and behold, Exodia is a $5 promo. Okay, $5 versus $345. That is a stark contrast, and you can see that this one, ever since it was announced for the tins, it has, just gone down and down and down. You can see that people really hype this thing up from the beginning, and it is following a parabolic shape where it's coming back down. And I can't imagine again that this thing sticks the landing. Maybe it does. I think this has more chance to stick the landing than Stardust because there are the 4 other limbs which are only printed in Starlight Rare, and so certain collectors are only going to want a complete set. If you're going to spend money on all the limbs, you might as well buy the head in Starlight Rare as well. And so, I don't think you're going to cheap out completely on the head, but I think a lot of people, are going to be more than happy to forgo the Exodia head in favor of the $5 almost identical alternative. Next up, you have this new Speed Duel box, which I think you look at the market prices. I don't think that this can stick, and it just came out, so I imagine naturally prices tend to come down as time goes on from the release of the set. And then you look at the other things like DM is it's doing quite well for itself. It does depend on, what the original supply of this box is. However, I can't imagine that it was so under ordered that these things are going to be pennies on the dollar. Of all these cards, I think that the Arcana version is probably the best one, in my opinion, because it's a new high rarity, whereas all these other ones you can find them in different rarities that are still very collectible. So this is the one that I'm most interested in. But this brings another printing of DMG that looks quite nice. It looks beautiful, and so I imagine people are going to be chasing after it, or maybe not chasing after it, but this is something that forms kind of a low mid rarity for modern collectors. Next up, we get into some of the quarter century secrets out of Battles of Legend. This is one that has really, it declined significantly, and it's been on the downturn since then. You can see that you can find them for $44. That's not too bad, and a lot of recent sales under that $40 mark. I don't know if those are low feedback sellers or what, but this is an interesting card. We'll see where collectors value this one. I think that this is quite interesting. So if it gets very, very cheap, sub 25, this is definitely one that I might target. But, until it hits that mark, and I don't know if it ever will, I might hold off unless I can find a really good deal where I'm not having to pay shipping and fees and all that sort of stuff. And taxes are the big ones. Next up, we have Dad, quarter century secret. This one is actually doing better. I don't know why that is the case. I'm assuming Edison players are picking this up. It's surprising because the Ghost Rare has fallen out considerably. You can see that there's one listed with pretty significant shipping. All in all, this is about 58 for this listing, and then it goes up to 60 after that. A lot of sales. Maybe this is a buyout. It looks to be that, there's a pretty consistent high sales rate for this card. So I don't know, but it's a bit surprising given that this is not high rarity, and also there's another high rarity. This isn't the highest rarity, and there's also another premium rarity in the Ghost Rare that was printed recently out of Ghosts from the Past 2. Next up, we have Volcanic Shell. This is a fun little one. A lot of players are going to be after this specific one. You can see that you can find it for a little under 40. It's kind of had an interesting trajectory since its release about 2 months ago. But, it's kind of stabilizing right now. It's done pretty okay, in fact. And I think it's something that, obviously, there's an original print ulti, but I think that it's still a really nice card, and that original print ulti at Force of the Breaker is not so pervasive, it's not so available that people are not going to be looking at this one. Magicians of Bond and Unity, this is one that I picked up for $130, including taxes, fees, shipping, all that sort of stuff. At the time, I think it was $180, and so it was a very, very good deal. This one has come down a lot since then, and you can see that it's going down by significant amounts, and they're motivated sellers. When you see these sort of price jumps, it means that people have said, I've had enough. I'm just trying to sell. I'm not trying to undercut by a cent. I'm just going to do $5 and see if anybody bites. It also has 52 listings when you compare that. Actually, I don't know if I have anything else from Duelist Nexus, but it's pretty high for quarter century secret rares. We can quickly look. And there are the other versions coming out soon, so I don't know where everything's going to end up. Actually, it's about the same as Revolution Synchron, and a lot of the other quarter century secret rares are lower than that. Almost every single one besides Revolution Synchron are in fact lower. Hida is one that I personally think might be an interesting penny stonk. You can get it for 42, but who knows where it's going to end up. I think that at 42 it's not terrible, and I don't expect this to get another high rarity, which is one of the biggest things nowadays, is that they just reprint the same cards over and over in a ton of mid to high rarities, and so they all just sort of cannibalize any demand as a collector's item. Next up, we have Crimson Dragon. This is one that I've said before is probably my top card at a Duelist Nexus. Just because I think 5D's collectors are really going to go after the Crimson Dragon. I don't think that... I think that a lot of 5D's collectors are going go after this thing because, this is one of the most iconic things from the show, and finally got a printing, and it's not something that has, a original print Ghost Rare or something like that to compete with a quarter century secret. This is really, a new card, and there aren't alternatives for it. So, it's doing quite well. It's at 130. I think this one's actually going to stick quite well, and, give it a couple of years. I think this will be at the top of Duelist Nexus. Maybe Magicians of Bonds and Unity will be at the top. I don't know. The reason that it might is because this does have a secret rare out of the same set, whereas Magicians of Bond and Unity has no other printings. It's only available out of Duelist Nexus as a quarter century secret, and it will be available out of the next couple of sets. In quarter century secret with a different background, but obviously you want to go after the first one, and I think the other ones are not going to be as well received. Next up, we have Rainbow Dragon Ghost Rare. This is one I wanted to take a look at because if you scroll down this list, you can find that it's $3 for the new quarter century secret. So I wanted to look at, the previous high rarity for this. You can see that there was a sale at $4.15 for a near mint first edition. We'll see, if there is anything lower than that right now. This has actually stuck its value pretty well, all things considered. You can see there are a couple more at $4.15, and then you see a couple of these jumps. So we'll see where this ends up. Actually, there are 3 listed by Big City Cards. Anyways, this is, a very, very iconic card. It's the first ever Ghost Rare, and so I think it's a pretty interesting one to keep your eyes peeled on. Next up, we have Dark Arm Dragon. I wanted to show this one because, I don't know why the plot looks like this. It seems to have stabilized, actually, but you can see that you can get played versions for around 30. The near mint is actually a lot higher than I was expecting. This is interesting. So this might change my opinion. Okay, so near mint's verified is 40. That's actually not... That's better than it was for a while. You can see that it was kind of mid to high 30s for a while. So this is actually doing quite well. I don't know if Edison is really just taking off and people are deciding that these sort of mid-high rarities in the modern era are better than the original print secrets, but this is an interesting one as well. Cyber Dragon also has a quarter century secret out of the tin. You can see that, yep, $5 for that. So again, it's got a lot to sort of cannibalize. This has a weird price trajectory, a lot of bumps along the way. I don't know how much of this is noise versus actual bumps. Clearly, this is a pretty significant bump right here. If we could go back further than a year, I believe there was another bump before this, and it's starting to, it oscillates quite heavily, more so than, most cards. If we look for a near mint verified, you can find them for 45. We'll see what the quarter century secret does to this. This is one I'm interested in. I'm interested in the Ghost Rare specifically because I want to see what happens to a rarity that was always thought of as a very premium rarity that then gets this sort of crazy printing of the rarity. For example, Ghost from the Past 2, and it tanks all the prices of the Ghost Rares. I want to see what happens when they're not being printed in mass quantities. All the recent Ghost Rares have only been from Legendary Duelists, which are much harder to pull, and I don't know how much of these sets are being opened right now. How much from these sets have been opened because, no one can make money off of them. And if you haven't seen the most recent, Salamangrate, there's the newest Salamangrate Ghost Rare. Not many listings, and you can see that there's not a whole lot for it to go down. Near mint is still 52. That's about at market price. It hasn't gone down as quickly as a lot of modern printings of cards, and I think some of that has to do with the fact that there's just not enough of this product being opened because no one wants to open it and no one wants to buy it because you can't make money. So we'll see where everything ends up. But overall, Ghost Rares, it seems like not a lot. Every Legendary Duelist has a Ghost Rare, but it seems like Konami's done with Ghosts from the Past. And so, you might have this sort of blip where they're printing an absurd amount of Ghost Rares all of a sudden, but it seems to be pretty short-lived. It was just 2 sets, and, what happens 5 years down the line when Ghost rares have not been printed in mass quantities. Obviously there are mass quantities of these legendary duelist ones, but not at the same level as, Ghosts from the past. So what happens? Next up, we have Red Eyes. Again, this is another one that has a printing here. This one's $7. I imagine this is overpriced. I think Red Eyes is historically very, very overrated. Especially, are people going to put their money in the Red Eyes over the Cyber Dragon? I'd be surprised. I think Black Rose is really overvalued. Neos might be a little undervalued, like Neos versus Red Eyes. And Neos doesn't have as many modern high rarity printings, so we'll see. It does have that Millennium Secret Rare, but near mint, you can see it's at 58, but look at the number of listings from Gamer's Choice. They are trying to get rid of these things, and so eventually they're going to go lower. That's all I'll say. Cyber Dragon Ultimate Rare. This is one I just wanted to check out quickly. You see 2 unlims, and then first edition, $660. This has actually stuck its landing quite well. It was going down for a while, and it seems to actually be recovering. A lot of these Ultimate Rares, there are enough people who want them that their incredibly small supply has caused them to not tank as much as a lot of the sort of DM era stuff. If you haven't noticed, obviously some of the GX stuff was really hyped to the moon, but DM stuff, there's just so much of it. And if you haven't noticed, like the first edition MRD, a lot of the first edition LOB, first edition MRL, all that stuff is tanked considerably more than the Ultimate Rares because there's just way more of that stuff out there. And then finally, we have Book of Moon, Ultimate Rare from Tournament Pack 13. This, I believe, is just straight Edison hype. I did have one of these at one point. I ended up selling it. But you can see 98, but the market price is going up and up and up. There's a lot of Edison hype, and people are excited. So we'll see where this one ends up. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. Use the link in the description to support the channel. It's been your boy Watomarmelon. Peace out.